You open your investment app on a random Tuesday. $6,000 went in this year. The balance reads 6,200. $200 of growth for 12 months of showing up. You do the math in your head. That's less than a decent tip on a nice dinner. This is supposed to be how you get rich. For years, every financial expert has told you the same three words. Invest early, invest consistently. Nobody tells you what the first 10 years actually feel like. And that gap between what you're told and what you experience is exactly why most people quit before the math ever gets to work in their favor. Here's the model. $500 a month every month into an S&P 500 index fund, a single investment that owns a small slice of the 500 largest public companies in America instead of betting on just one. Average long-term return adjusted for inflation, 7% a year. That number isn't a guess. It comes from economist Jeremy Siegel's research in Stocks for the Long Run, which tracked nearly 2 centuries of U.S. market data and found real stock returns clustering close to 7% decade after decade, war after war, crash after crash. So you start. Year 1, $6,000 contributed, balance around $6,200. Interest earned roughly $200. This is the most discouraging year you will ever have. Compound interest hasn't shown up to help yet. It's just you alone doing 100% of the lifting and the account barely notices. Year 5, $30,000 of your own money sitting at around $36,000. $6,000 of that came from growth, not from your paycheck. The snowball has a shape now. It's small. It still needs you to push it up the hill every single month, but for the first time, it's rolling a little on its own. Year 10, $60,000 contributed, balance around $87,000. $27,000 of pure interest money that showed up without you doing anything at all. You're close to the six-figure mark. And here is the mistake almost everyone makes at exactly this point. They assume the next 100,000 will take just as long as the first. It won't, not even close. Because something changes right around $100,000. At that balance, 7% a year generates about $7,000 in growth. That's more than the $6,000 you're contributing yourself. For the first time since you opened the account, your money is doing more work than you are. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman spent decades studying how people actually experience gains and losses, research that became his prospect theory. One of its core findings, we feel the pain of stagnation far more sharply than the pleasure of slow, steady gains. That's exactly what the first 100,000 feels like. It's brutal specifically because your brain is wired to hate the wait. The good news is that once you're past it, the wait keeps getting shorter. Watch what happens next. Getting from 100,000 to 200,000 takes about 7 years. 200,000 to 300,000, 5 years. 300,000 to 400,000, 4 years. The gap between milestones keeps shrinking even though you're still contributing the exact same $500 a month the entire time. Nothing about your behavior changed. The only thing that changed is how much money was already sitting in the account quietly earning on itself while you slept. This is the part most people never picture concretely. So let's walk through it. Imagine two people, both investing $500 a month for 30 years. One of them in year 11 watches the market drop, panics, and pulls the money out to wait until things calm down. The other does nothing. No reaction, no rebalancing drama, just the same automatic transfer every month for 30 straight years. Researchers Thomas Stanley and William Danko documented this exact pattern in The Millionaire Next Door, their study of self-made American millionaires. The wealth in their data wasn't explained by income or by investment sophistication. It was explained by consistency, by a simple refusal to interrupt a boring process. The quiet investor wins almost every time for a reason that has nothing to do with intelligence and everything to do with behavior. That 11th year scenario isn't hypothetical. Anyone who was investing through 2008 watched their balance fall by close to 40% in a matter of months. Anyone investing in early 2020 watched a similar drop happen in a matter of weeks. In both cases, the 7% long-term average didn't stop being true. It just went quiet for a while before it came back louder than before. The investors who kept contributing through those months, buying shares at lower prices without realizing that's what they were doing, ended up further ahead than the ones who stepped away and waited for a signal that it was safe to return. There usually wasn't one. The recovery just happened the same way the $200 in year one happened quietly and on no particular schedule. There are three more moments in this journey worth marking because each one changes what your money actually means to your life, not just how much of it there is. The first is $100,000, the mark you just walked through. Brutal to reach because it demands close to a decade of contributing far more than you're earning back. But it's the moment the machine finally switches on. The second is $650,000. At 7%, that balance throws off around $45,000 a year, close to 2/3 of the median household income in the United States. You're not retired, you probably don't feel rich, but you've bought something that never shows up on a balance sheet: the ability to say no. No to the boss who crosses the line. No to the job that's quietly draining you. No to staying somewhere out of fear because you finally have a floor under your feet. The third is $1 million. At 7%, that's $70,000 to $80,000 a year generated without you lifting a finger. Reaching it the first time takes about 29 years of $500 months. But the next $500,000 takes 6 years. The $500,000 after that takes 5. What used to be a slow, flat line has become something closer to vertical. Picture what those three moments actually change about a Tuesday like the one you started with. At 100,000, you stop dreading the monthly statement because for the first time it's growing faster than you're feeding it. At 650,000, you sit through a performance review that goes badly, and instead of panicking about rent, you find yourself oddly calm because you know the floor under you doesn't depend on this job. At 1 million, the account has quietly become a second income, one that never calls in sick, never asks for a raise, and never stops showing up whether you're working, traveling, or asleep. None of those moments require a lottery ticket or a lucky stock pick. They require the same $500 on the same day for a very long time. Here's the counterintuitive twist buried in all of this. The hardest, slowest, most demoralizing stretch of the entire 30-year journey is the very first one. Not year 20, not year 25. Year 1 through 10, when the numbers barely move and the $6,000 you contributed each year did almost all of the work alone. Everyone assumes building wealth gets harder as the stakes get bigger. The math says the opposite. It gets easier, faster, and more automatic precisely at the moment most people have already given up. And that's the real gap between people who end up wealthy and people who don't. It was never about knowing the 7% number, or understanding what an index fund is, or having access to some secret account rich people use. Stanley's research made that explicit. The millionaires in his study weren't unusually brilliant investors. They were unusually boring ones. The gap is behavioral. It's the car upgrade at year 3 because the old one started to feel embarrassing next to a friend's. It's the bigger apartment at year 5 because the promotion made it feel earned. It's the constant quiet pull towards spending that gives you a dopamine hit today at the exact moment your balance most needs you to leave it alone and let year 11 do its work. Think about the years in between too, because they explain why so few people make it to the other side. The gap from 0 to 100,000 isn't just financially slow, it's socially expensive. Your friends are leasing new cars. Someone you know just closed on a house that's bigger than it needs to be. Your account, meanwhile, ticks up by a few $100s a month, and nobody claps for that. There's no dopamine hit for a boring transfer that happens automatically on the 3rd of every month. So people upgrade the lifestyle instead, because it feels like winning today, even though it quietly resets the compounding clock back to 0. The people who make it through aren't smarter. They've just made the process invisible to themselves. The transfer happens before they see the money. There's no monthly decision to invest because the decision was made once years ago and never revisited. That single design choice, automating the boring part so willpower is never required, is the difference between someone who reaches the $100,000 mark on schedule and someone who restarts the clock every time life gets tempting. None of this requires picking the right stock timing in the market or finding some account the wealthy keep hidden from everyone else. It requires the same $500 moved on the same day every month into the same broad index fund for longer than feels reasonable. The math in front of you already proves the boring version wins. The only open question is whether you're still funding it on the day the 7% finally starts outpulling you. So think about your own account again, the one you checked on a random Tuesday, watching $200 of growth on $6,000 of effort and wondering if any of this was even worth it. It was, not because that Tuesday felt like progress. It didn't. It was worth it because that Tuesday was the first rung on a ladder that gets easier to climb the higher you go, as long as you're still standing on it, the day the 7% finally starts pulling more weight than you do.